In this video, we're going to look at exact output values for the tangent function when the input is 30 degrees and 60 degrees. Now, if we have an interior angle measure of 30 degrees, like this in this right triangle, then the other interior angle measure that's a non-right angle is going to be 60 degrees. And so these things go hand in hand. Recall from a previous video that if we have a 30-degree angle in this standard orientation, then the shorter side of the right triangle is 1/2 hypotenuse lengths long. And we also use the Pythagorean theorem to determine that if we have one hypotenuse length and 1/2 hypotenuse length for the side lengths there, then the other side length is square root of 3 divided by 2 hypotenuse lengths. So tangent of 30 degrees, if we're looking at this 30-degree angle here, tangent of 30 degrees represents the slope of the hypotenuse of this right triangle, and the slope of the hypotenuse is equal to 1/2 hypotenuse, so 1/2 hypotenuse length for the vertical side, divided by square root of 3 divided by 2 hypotenuse lengths for the horizontal side. So in this case, 1/2 divided by square root of 3 divided by 2 ends up being equal to 1 divided by the square root of 3, based on the properties of fractions. So we can say tangent of 30 degrees is equal to 1 divided by the square root of 3. However, it's common in math to rationalize the denominator. So we often want rational or whole numbers in our denominator, so it's kind of considered ugly to have a square root in the denominator. So we can actually patch this up a little bit. 1 divided by square root of 3 is equal to 1 divided by square root of 3 times 1. However, we can rewrite 1 as a fraction where the numerator and denominator are equal. So for example, if we wrote square root of 3 divided by the square root of 3, then the square root of 3 divided by square root of 3 is just equal to 1, and 1 times anything is itself. So there's no problems in just multiplying something by a ratio of the exact same values. So using the properties of multiplication of fractions, we end up with the square root of 3 divided by square root of 3 squared. And the square root of 3 squared is equal to 3, and so we end up with the square root of 3 divided by 3. And therefore, tangent of 30 degrees is square root of 3 divided by 3. So we'll highlight that there. I'll also take a moment to point out that 30 degrees is the same as pi divided by 6 radians, and therefore tangent of pi divided by 6, for working in radians, is also equal to square root of 3 divided by 3. So those two things kind of go hand in hand. One's in degrees, one is in radians for our angle measure input. Okay, now let's look at the other angle real quick. We have 60 degrees here. What I'm going to do is reorient this right triangle, and it's not going to change any side lengths. So let me redraw that real quick. Okay, so if we have, if we're looking at the 60-degree angle, then tangent of 60 degrees represents the slope of the hypotenuse of this right triangle. And in this case, that's going to be square root of 3 divided by 2, which is the vertical side length, divided by the horizontal side length, which is 1/2, and square root of 3 divided by 2 divided by 1/2 is going to be equal to the square root of 3. And therefore, tangent of 60 degrees is equal to the square root of 3. Just highlight that real quick. Should also point out that 60 degrees is the same as pi divided by 3 radians, and therefore, tangent of pi divided by 3 is equal to the square root of 3. Those two things go hand in hand.